Welcome to Future Talk. On today's program, we're going to talk about artificial intelligence, also known as AI. What are the benefits that AI can produce? What are some of the dangers it can create? And how can these dangers be controlled? Here to discuss these issues is my guest, Jerry Kaplan. Jerry is a Silicon Valley entrepreneur who co-founded 2 publicly traded technology companies. He's also a futurist, an AI expert, and a teacher of philosophy, ethics, and the impact of AI at Stanford University. He's also a best-selling author. His latest book is called Humans Need Not Apply, A Guide to Wealth and Work in the Age of Artificial Intelligence. Jerry, welcome to the program.
Oh, well, thank you, Marty. A pleasure to be here.
You've got your book right here. Why not hold it up to the camera so people can get a look at it?
Sure.
By the way, I should mention that I have actually read your book and enjoyed it very much and found it very enlightening. So if people buy it and read it, they should enjoy it.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate the endorsement.
Now, let me ask a question about artificial intelligence. What exactly do we mean by that? Is it something that is similar to human intelligence, or is it something altogether different?
Well, I think it's a very misleading term because I believe that it is fundamentally different than human intelligence. It's misleading because it implies that the machines are intelligent that we're building, when in fact I don't think there's really much evidence that that's the case. We're building computer systems that address problems or have capabilities that when those problems are solved by humans, humans definitely use intelligence to solve them. But that doesn't necessarily mean that the machines themselves are intelligent. In fact, they're usually designed for some particularly narrow purpose, and it just means that there are different ways to solve the problem besides using intelligence when we can use machines to do that.
So does that mean that they just carry out instructions, they do what they're programmed to do, and they can't do anything unless they're programmed to do it?
Well, not quite. I don't think that's an adequate description because some of the new programming techniques, particularly in the area of machine learning, you don't actually program the machines in the sense of do this and then do that, a sequence of steps. You give it examples, and out of that it induces a methodology internally to itself for how to go about addressing or solving the particular problem. So you don't really instruct the machine in that normal sense that typical programming has been for the past several decades.
So are they able to learn from experience? The machine can actually learn things that you don't teach it directly. It can access information and absorb it without your help?
That's correct. But again, the words tend to imply something much more than what it really is. Machine learning doesn't mean the machine can learn anything. It doesn't necessarily learn the way humans learn. In fact, it would appear to be quite different. But it does mean that for certain classes of problems, for example, if you want to recognize whether a picture contains a chair, by showing hundreds of thousands of pictures of chairs to one of these computer programs, they can induce out of that some internal representation that allows them to look at other pictures and then correctly identify whether or not a chair is or is not present inside that picture.
So we're talking about pattern recognition, basically.
I think that's not unreasonable to say that it's a form of statistical analysis for certain kinds of data or pattern recognition for visual or other types of patterns. That's what machine learning is mostly about, yes.
Now, I've heard this term neural net. Is that part of what you're referring to?
It is. There are a number of different techniques and approaches in the area of machine learning, but so-called neural networks is definitely one of them. Again, the words imply a kind of anthropomorphic characterization of the machines that I don't think is really appropriate. A neural network is a programming technique which is organized in a way that is somewhat reminiscent of what they think human brains may be, the way human brains might be organized. But it's a little more than an analogy. It's a little bit like saying, well, airplanes have wings and birds have wings. Well, is that the same thing or is it something different? I mean, airplanes don't flap their wings. They operate those wings in a very different way.
Now, what can artificial intelligence actually accomplish? How can we expect it to affect our lives in, say, the next 10 years or so?
Well, 10 years in the field is not necessarily a very long time frame. However, we are seeing some developments of new kinds of technologies, advances in the field, which are going to have significant practical impact. And as a general matter, what that means is we're going to be able to use them to automate certain kinds of tasks that previously required human attention and human effort and human intellect. And as that class of tasks expands, that means that people will no longer need to perform those kinds of tasks and jobs, and we'll be able to substitute automation for human labor.
Can you give an example of the kind of tasks you're talking about?
Oh, sure, absolutely. Well, the one that everybody's aware of because there's been so much publicity about it is self-driving cars. So a lot of these techniques can be applied to what is effectively a robot, the car, that can sense its environment and can follow certain kinds of rules with respect to navigating safely through traffic situations. So that's an example of the kinds of expansion of the types of automation that occurs with these new technologies.
So does that mean that all people who drive vehicles for a living, like truck drivers and bus drivers, are going to be out of work?
Well, largely the answer to that is yes. But you have to put that context, the historical context of the fact that advances in automation have always put people out of work in that sense. However, always new jobs get created, and those new jobs are different. There are 3 million licensed commercial drivers in the US today, and they're not all going to go away, but over the next 20, 30, 40 years, it's very likely that a lot of the tasks that they perform, the driving that they do, will be performed automatically instead, and what that means is we'll need far fewer of those drivers. So the question for society is, what happens to those people? What do you do with people who have driven a cab, let's say, for all of their lives? There may be other types of jobs, but they may not be qualified or suited for those particular jobs.
So what happens? Will they have to get more education? Are we coming to a place where most jobs will be so technical that a high school education won't be enough? You'll need a college degree to be employable?
Well, I do think that you'll need typically, well, it depends on the type of job. That is really the correct answer to that question. Some jobs, you don't need a high school degree at all, and people can be perfectly good at them. And many of those are not automatable at all. So I think it's not the right way to think about it, to think that there's a certain level of education and that the machines can do anything up to that level, but beyond that, only people can do them. The truth is that even highly trained professionals, people with years and years of experience, what you think of as the highest level of types of professions, and lawyers and doctors and accountants, and that the truth is that a great deal of what they do is routine and automatable. And with the new technologies, we're beginning to encroach more and more on the things that they do. Now, that doesn't mean, for example, that we don't need lawyers. We're not going to be living in a world where some robot's going to go to court and say, Your Honor, my client is not guilty. That's not what we're going to see. But what a typical lawyer does is simple routine contracts or agreements or rental leases and things like that. And a lot of that type of work actually is automatable, so that you just need a lot fewer lawyers. So the lawyers can focus on the higher level tasks. But so for some people, these are productivity improvements. You're improving the productivity of a lawyer. That's not putting them out of work, but it means you need fewer of them. So it is putting other people out of work as well.
Does it look like all this new technology will generate enough jobs to replace the jobs that went away? When the automobile was invented, it put the horse and buggy business pretty much out of business. But so many new jobs were created. Are these new technology jobs labor intensive, or can you run a big high-tech organization with very few humans?
Well, this is the critical question for our future, is are we going to be destroying work faster than we're creating work? Now, the historical studies of this have been very, very interesting. What they show is that as a matter of a fact, that new jobs have always been created. Some of it created by the very technology that has put people out of work. So we're given an interesting example. we may no longer need stable hands to handle the horses that we used to ride as a form of transportation. So they were out of work. Oh my God, what are they going to do? Well, the automobiles that replaced them spawned all kinds of new jobs, not only in the manufacture and sale of those, but ancillary areas such as the concept of a motel, which you might know came from the word a motor hotel, because now you needed, when people were traveling by car, you needed a place for them to stay. I understand that fast food was actually an invention that was largely influenced by the invention of the automobile, because people needed to eat quickly, stop somewhere, eat, and move on. So that whole style of eating was largely driven by the automobile. So the question is, what's going to happen now? Because we're about to hit a broad swath of the activities that people typically engage in when they work are going to be automatable. Where are the new jobs, and what are they going to be?
Now, how will it affect you in your home? Will your home be smart in the future so that instead of using a key to open your door, you'll say, "Hi, it's Marty," and the door will just open? Things like that. Or you'll tell the TV what channel to turn to so you don't have to go to the effort to pick up the remote control?
Well, the examples that you happen to drive were voice-driven examples, and often that can work. But largely, I think what it's going to mean is that you won't have to say anything. You will simply register your identity with your house, and when you walk up, the door will be open. So the houses and other environments that we work in will be able to adapt in what you might think of as intelligent ways to the needs that we have. If you're going to bed, you might say, "I'm going to bed now," and your house will know to turn the lights down or not to ring the phone or whatever it might be. These are the kinds of, the advances in artificial intelligence will facilitate that kind of what's called smart homes.
Now, some people are very worried about the use of artificial intelligence in weapons of war reaching entirely new levels of destruction. How serious a concern is that warfare is going to be automated and like robots will be attacking robots with no constraints?
Well, it's a very serious problem, and we're going to have to put a lot of time and effort, and there are significant efforts going on right now to worry about exactly this. The same technologies that make our lives more productive and make us wealthier as a society can be applied to, unfortunately, to the prosecution of war. And we are going to see all kinds of innovations potentially that make wars deadlier, make them easier to fight, and make them less expensive to fight. That's the main problem, is the third of those three.
So is the worry that the other side is going to get it first and we have to rush to get it before they do?
Well, this is one of the issues that people are very concerned about right now in the artificial intelligence community. Are we going to create a new arms race by investing in these new military technologies or military applications of the same so-called dual-use technologies that also have peaceful applications? Should we do that? Should we not do that? Are we going to let other people get ahead? When it came to something like nuclear weapons, the level of investment was so high that was necessary to create that new kind of weapon that only major state actors were capable of affording the investment to go make that happen. But if we have new types of weaponry that allows any despot or any terrorist organization to unleash some terrible event using this technology at a very low cost, that's going to be a real problem. And the same kinds of efficiencies that computers have provided in our civilian life are, because of the new technologies, going to have wide application to the military and may, in fact, enable a lot of parties that we do not want to see enabled to do some very bad things.
So do we have any ideas about how to deal with this, or we're just going to let it happen, whatever happens?
Well, a lot of very smart people are putting a lot of thought into this right now. It's not something you see publicly, but there are committees at the UN, there's a lot of people in the Defense Department, people that I know are on committees and are writing papers on this or going to meetings to try to formulate something that will help us to understand how we can get the benefits of this technology without making the world a more dangerous place. The same kind of thing happened with the biological sciences, with genetic engineering. That community had to come together and set certain standards for what kinds of things were going to get done and what kinds of things were not going to get done. And we're going to need a similar kind of thoughtful approach, mainly driven by experts, not by sort of public discussion, which tends to not really understand the details of this stuff, so that we can properly deploy and control the technologies that are being developed.
Now, is this something for which we have to reach an agreement between nations? The United States could make a decision not to produce this technology, but what's to stop other, unless we have something like the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty? But it sounds like these weapons are cheap enough. A non-state actor with no sense of responsibility could acquire them.
I think that's largely the case. That's going to be the big problem that we're going to have to deal with that. We can just say we're outlawing this, but we can't stop people from doing it. And we're talking about technologies that are not going to be terribly expensive. That same self-driving car technology can be used to make a self-driving tank, or can turn a self-driving car into a bomb. It's targeted, that just goes down the street, finds its location, and blows up.
Do you think that AI research should maybe be regulated by the government? They should say, well, we think that this type of development would be really dangerous, so we're not going to let you pursue this avenue of research because it's not cheap until somebody else develops it first. So if we say we're not going to develop this because if we do, it'll get out and everybody will get it and it'll be a catastrophe.
Well, the problem is that the technologies that are being developed have very wide applicability. So you can't really say, well, that's a really dangerous development. Take something, I'll just use a very non-tech example. How about a knife? Well, you can use a knife to kill people, but you can also use it to chop carrots. And it doesn't really make sense for the government to say, well, we're banning all knives. So we need to be very careful about throwing out the baby with the bathwater, so to speak. And part of the problem we have in the public discussion today is that understanding of this field is not being driven by the actual technology and the actual applications. Understanding is being driven by Hollywood and the media. And it's very exciting to show robots running around on battlefields or
Taking over the world.
Taking over the world, whatever it might be. But that's just pure fantasy at this point. There are some real dangers, but the public image of AI as sort of robots running wild is not really a danger that we have in any near-term future.
Do you think that artificial intelligence will ever be used to make judgment calls? For example, it works on the basis of probabilities. Could it analyze foreign policy problems? Well, what are the probabilities that something bad will happen if we do this, and what are the probabilities that something, or should that not even be left to the consideration of machines? That should be strictly a human decision.
Well, the answer to whether or not that's the case is how good is it? And do we know when it's making a good recommendation versus a bad recommendation? So as long as we have a human interposed, this is called human in the loop, that's a good thing. But often it's the case that the machines can do a far better job, and on things that you might really be surprised at. A good example today is automated, what are they called? Autopilots for flying. The plain fact is that we would probably be safer if we did not have pilots in our aircraft. Strange but true. The average pilot only actually pilots for a few minutes out of what may be a multi-hour trip. And even then, the plane is perfectly capable of doing it. And pilots do sometimes some crazy things. And almost most of the accidents that take place, there's human error. So we might actually be safer if we did not have pilots in the planes. But think about the way people are going to feel when they get on the plane and find out there is no pilot. It would take a while for people to get comfortable with the idea that the planes are actually flying themselves and that they're safer by virtue of having them there. So
now, can you program a vehicle like a plane or a car for every eventuality? Let's say you program the driverless car, and one day it comes across a situation that was not anticipated and it's not programmed for. How do you know what it's going to do?
Well, like any machine, you have to understand the operating parameters where it's going to work. The answer is either you have some general principles that you have encoded into the control programs that will make some kind of decision or take some kind of action in the face of a novel situation, which absolutely they will run into. Or right now, you try to hand it off to a person, which is an equally bad idea. But the thing to bear in mind is this. Most auto accidents are not caused by the car. They're caused by the people driving the car. Distracted driving, people doing dumb things. And the fact is that people are pretty poor in this regard. So a lot of people get killed. We have about 30,000 deaths a year here in the U.S. Due to auto accidents. And the vast majority of those either could have been prevented or were actually caused by the drivers of those particular cars. Now, let's look at automated driving technology. Most estimates are that we probably eliminate maybe 80 or 90% of those accidents. Now, that's a lot of lives to save. So worrying about the fact that they may occasionally go haywire, so to speak, and be responsible, if you like to look at it that way, for an accident. That's a trade-off, which looking at it from the lives saved standpoint, is definitely worth accepting that danger in return for the increased safety on our streets and our highways.
Do you think there's anything that artificial intelligence can never achieve that humans will always be able to do better, realms that AI will never penetrate?
Absolutely. See, this is the problem with calling it artificial intelligence. You think, well, it can do anything a person can do. No, it can't. There are lots of jobs that involve, as an inherent part of the value, face-to-face contact, human interaction, emotional efforts. Nobody wants to watch robots play tennis at Wimbledon. That just isn't meaningful. Nobody wants to go to a robotic undertaker that says, "I'm so sorry for your loss." That's not what you want. Nobody wants a personal shopper. You don't want to date a robot. So there are plenty of human activities which are inherently human, and for which it's not really meaningful to say they're subject to automation. So I don't think we're in any danger of running out of things for people to do. It's just going to shift dramatically the class of tasks that need to be performed by people versus tasks that can be done by machine.
Now, if artificial intelligence is not really a good name for it because it's not really intelligence, is there a better name that would be more accurate in describing what it is?
I think that that's a very good question. Nobody's asked me that. There have been other names for the field. They wouldn't have generated the kind of interest because they're not quite as, would the word be, exciting or salacious as, oh my
Not
God.
as sexy.
Yeah, we got to get the gee whiz out of this. What we're really talking about is engineers building automation. That's been the case from the get-go, from the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. I'm sure that the people who used to weave cloth and they rolled in the automatic looms and threw them out of work thought, oh my God, it's doing what people can do. This is a terrible thing.
Now, is there a possibility of losing human values through some of these machines? Like we'll find that humans are more expendable than machines. We can do without humans easier than we can do without machines, and maybe we'll feel humans are less worthy of existence since they can't do so much.
Well, I think a lot of people get a sense of value out of their job besides just getting paid for it. You have the human contact, you have a sense of self-worth, a sense of contribution for society. As long as we have viable and valuable activities for humans to engage in, I don't think that's going to happen. I think we'll look at this, these new tasks that will be performed by machines like driving cars as simply an advance in automation and not as somehow encroaching into the value that a human being can provide. I'll bet you can dig a ditch perfectly well, but you go out and get what are they called? Those machines that...
a ditch digging machine.
I guess a ditch digging machine. Thank you very much. I should have thought of that. You don't feel like, my God, what my life has lost value because I no longer can have to swing a shovel to dig a ditch. Well, that'll be the same thing with a lot of the new areas that are going to be automated.
Now, you teach ethics in relation to AI at Stanford. What are some of the ethical considerations that we should be thinking about as we develop AI?
Well, that's a very valid area that we spend a lot of time discussing and teaching and talking about at Stanford, along with a lot of other research institutions. As we introduce new kinds of technology, it tends to take people out of the equation for certain things where that may make them, we would really rather that a person be responsible for making certain decisions and accomplishing certain results. So we can build machines which can decide who to hire, as an interesting example, and can do a good job. They can assess your skills, and they can decide this person's suitable for that position. And the same thing for firing. We no longer need that person, they need to go. But I think that I'd rather, if somebody's going to get fired, at least you'd like to know that you were fired by someone who is capable of feeling remorse or empathy for the emotional effects and the practical effects that it's going to have on you. And so I don't know that we really want to put machines in that kind of a position. You don't want them making life and death decisions in hospitals necessarily without some person who can sympathize with the feelings of the people who are being affected. They ought to be a part of that decision.
Right. So if you're doing business with machines, it's like there's no human contact. You're not dealing with another soul, so that can be a negative experience. Maybe machines are detaching people from each other and making life a little bit colder.
Correct.
We actually have to wrap up the show because I just got the signal. We only have about 30 seconds left, so I'd love to talk about this longer, but that'll have to wait for another time. I'd like to thank my guest, Jerry Kaplan, artificial intelligence expert, author of the new book, Humans Need Not Apply. Jerry, thanks for being here.
Thank you very much, Mark.
Thank you for watching. Visit our website, www.futuretalk.net. For Future Talk, I'm Marty Wasserman, and we'll see you next time.